On today's show, we're going to talk about estate planning and why you may need it.
Welcome to Farm Truck Financial, where wisdom and wealth ride shotgun. Join Eric Kearney, president of Retirement Wealth Advisors, who believes that the best kind of planning happens when 4 tires hit the road. So hop in. Today, we're talking about investment strategies that drive results.
Farm Truck Financial, we're riding with.
The information shared in today's episode is for general educational purposes only. It's not legal advice and doesn't create an attorney-client relationship. Everyone's situation is different, so please consult a qualified Florida attorney for advice specific to your needs. And welcome back to Farm Truck Financial. My name is Eric Kearney, president of Retirement Wealth Advisors, and today I am so excited to have Katharine Payne, estate planning attorney. Hey, Katharine, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you, Eric?
I'm great. So welcome to the show, and thank you so much for coming on. I know you are so busy, and so we were able to pull you away for a little bit, and I'm so grateful. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. So, Katharine, we talked off camera a little bit about how you got into this. Let's tell the viewer how you really got involved with estate planning. I mean, it's really something to be an attorney, but then how did you pick estate planning?
So I have been practicing estate planning my entire career, 21 years.
Wow.
And I was raised by my grandparents. So my mom was the first on her mother's side to go to college, and she became a nurse. Very proud of her. She's retired now. And as she was going to school, I basically lived with my grandparents and was raised by them. So I've always had a special place in my heart for the older demographics, and it just suits my personality. I like to tell folks I don't litigate. I'm a lover, not a fighter. And then I tease my husband and I say, I only fight with you sometimes, honey. I really love the idea of problem solving, of helping people, of helping families plan their estates. And then when a loved one passes away, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to come alongside them and navigate and help them navigate those laws and rules of trust and probate administration.
Yeah. And you talked a lot about education, right? Like,
yes.
With estate planning comes education. Like, you got to learn all this new jargon, right? And that's the one thing on Farm Truck Financial, how we created this, because like people wanted to learn something without all the jargon because it can be so intimidating. I think that's why so many people put off so many different things when it comes to their finances or their taxes or even estate planning. It's so overwhelming that like, I don't want to do anything about it. So we push it off, right? Do you see people putting that off?
You are absolutely right. I saw a statistic, I think I shared with you off camera last night, of approximately 60% of the population don't even have a will. I would say it's probably even a little bit higher than that. People for a number of reasons put off doing that. It's not something that's pleasant to think about. People get busy. A lot of folks think, well, I just don't have enough assets to even plan for that. And there's a lot of misconceptions. And as I shared with you off camera, if you don't have a plan in place, you really have a plan. You're going with the default plan that the government has for you.
Yeah.
So there is a plan in place, and you may not be happy with what the plan is because you really don't know what it is.
Right. So let me ask you something. When people call you, and we're going to have Katharine's information down below. So if you really do want to set an appointment with her, please give her a call, because we have used her through Retirement Wealth Advisors and our clients have been very happy. But what I really want to talk about is, what does your process look like? So instead of being overwhelming, what does the process look like when they actually come into your office?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I probably need to put on my official hat here and just say that this is for informational purposes only. I don't represent any one listener. I know that sounds silly, but the Florida bar is pretty strict about things like that. So that's my disclaimer. But when somebody calls into the office, my staff has a wonderful onboarding process. They ask them a few very simple questions. And I really like to encourage people to start thinking about things, start thinking about who they want to inherit their estate, who they want to help them make decisions if they become incompetent, financial decisions, healthcare decisions. Who would they like to be in charge of administering their estate? Sometimes people haven't really put a lot of thought into it. Other people have. So the more thought that you put into that before you meet with an attorney, and bring a list of questions, I think it's going to make that first appointment just very productive.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Don't you find a lot of people that have no idea why they're even coming in to see you, right? And so it's like you kind of got to get the ball rolling a little bit. And so same thing when it comes to their retirement. They're coming in, but they really don't understand what they're there for. They're like, well, I need to start preparing for this. And this is the one thing, especially when it comes to estate planning, we're doing the same thing. So really, you're doing like a discovery meeting up front, right? Like trying to figure out what they're trying to accomplish and everything, right? And then what does the second meeting look like for them?
So sometimes we can accomplish everything within that first meeting, and documents can be drafted, sent to the client to review, and then they come back one more time and they sign their documents. Other times, if we can't quite nail down the answers to questions, or maybe the person is a bit overwhelmed, we'll take our time and I'll just say, you know what? Are you okay? Because if we need to go into another day, we certainly can, and we can do a follow-up appointment. I never want somebody to feel pressured to make decisions. And I am notorious, Eric, for giving homework to people. So I'll type up a little homework list and I tease them and I say, here's your homework, and then we'll reconvene.
All right. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of homework. Hey, everybody, stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to go through some planning helpful tips for you when it comes to estate planning. Stay tuned.
Do you have questions and concerns about your money, lifestyle, and retirement? Like so many, investors today worry about living expenses, healthcare costs, inflation, and stock market volatility. Instead of worrying, start planning. Eric Kearney and his team at Retirement Wealth Advisors want to sit down, get to know you, and start to build a plan that matches your vision and goals. Let's have a real conversation about what's important to you and how we get there. We'll help build you a plan based on your goals, lifestyle, and income needs, with financial clarity over complexity. Call us today for a farm fresh second opinion. Remember, you only retire once, so let's get it right the first time.
And welcome back. And today, again, I'm with Katharine Payne, estate planning attorney. And Katharine, let's go over some different areas of estate planning that kind of are confusing to a lot of people because there are so many moving parts to this.
Sure. So a long time ago, I started thinking, how can I make a pretty complex subject matter a little less complicated? I really love the KISS method. Keep it simple. I say sweetie, some people say stupid, but keep it simple, sweetie. And really, I break it down into about 5 areas. And this isn't written anywhere. This is just me, 21 years, having many conversations with many different clients.
Right.
And some of the same topics and questions come up over and over. So the way that I like to put it to my clients is think of a roof, and estate planning is the roof. We're going to talk about the rooms within the house, and there's 5 important rooms that we're going to talk about: probate avoidance, asset protection, taxation, incapacity planning, and then most importantly, just making sure that your overall plan fits your circumstance, that it's a comprehensive and cohesive type of plan. So all of those aspects are important. And estate planning isn't stagnant, Eric.
No.
It's very dynamic. So if you're planning for probate avoidance, you also have to be aware of asset protection and income tax implications. So when you're not planning in a vacuum, you're really planning for all of those aspects at the same time.
So let's talk about probate because people really are confused about that. You know, we don't want a government entity deciding where our stuff goes. And this is actually when you don't do anything, that is the process that is going to go through. The state is going to step in and they're going to disregard who might have been taking care of you for the past 10 years if you're not married or anything. And they're going to look for next of kin. Your stuff may be going to someone where you don't want it to, right? And so you really do lose that control. And I do think it's also a mess for our loved ones, you know? So let's talk about probate and what you've seen a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I think that, in my opinion, that is one of the most confusing areas of estate planning, because when somebody comes in and if they open up our conversation with, Katharine, I'm here because I want a will. I want to avoid probate. I know that we have to have a conversation about what the will is and what it isn't.
Right.
So when you think about your assets, think about how they're titled. Is it in your individual name? Is it owned jointly? Is it in a trust? And then also think about if it's an asset that's in your name only, your personal name, is there a beneficiary under that? What we're really talking about with probate is how we transfer title of an asset that's owned by a person in their personal name, their individual name, without a beneficiary. Because at their death, it's still in their name without a beneficiary. Now we say it's owned by their estate. The last will and testament is the instructions for their probate. The probate process is the legal process of transferring legal title out of a person's name after their death over into the proper beneficiaries. So the will identifies the beneficiaries, who's in charge as the personal representative, what Florida calls an executor, and what the beneficiaries are to receive. The problem is if you don't have a will and if there's a probate asset at your death, Florida already has a result that's called the default intestacy laws. And you may not be happy with what that is. And it's essentially the Florida legislature's best guess as to what the person wanted to happen at their death when they didn't have a will. And people are surprised, especially with blended families, his and hers and ours children. It can be very heartbreaking sometimes because depending on the circumstances, even if it was a 50-year marriage, that surviving spouse may not receive everything.
Yeah, and that's another thing to bring up is like blended families, things change, situations change, economies change, personal economies change. And so everything is always evolving. Assets are being sold, assets are being bought, businesses are being sold, businesses are being bought. Everything is changing. And so I think what people have to realize is they've got to keep updating this as well, including the family members. You know, and I think there's a lot of people who are surprised when they still see an old ex-family member in there. And so, I mean, that does get confusing, right? Let's talk about asset protection a little bit too, because there's a lot of people interested in asset protection. How does that work into estate planning?
Yes, so very important aspect of estate planning. One of the most protected, not the only, but one of the most protected assets that we have in Florida is our Florida homestead. So we know about the homestead tax exemption. And if you don't, please look that up. But homestead asset protection is also very important. Essentially in Florida, as long as a person pays their mortgage, pays their taxes, and pays any contractors that they hire to perform work on their home is judgment proof. It is protected from their creditors. And a lot of folks don't realize that come here from other states. So I'm licensed in 2 states, Florida and West Virginia, where I'm from. And West Virginia does not have the unlimited asset protection over the homestead like Florida does over the equity.
We have seen a lot of people that came down to Florida, bought a very expensive home, have filed for bankruptcy, and are able to keep that. Right. So that was kind of a tactic that they've used in the past, correct?
They have. And there have been some laws in that area where you actually have to reside in Florida for a certain length of time before you're able to take advantage of those asset protection laws.
Gotcha. I mean, there's so many different things that vary state to state. That's what we pay attention to. Okay, guys, I know a lot of moving parts of this, a little overwhelming, but believe me, when you get to be with a professional like Katharine, it really does make a huge difference. Stay tuned. We got a lot more on estate planning when we continue.
You know who has one of the toughest retirements? Procrastinators. You keep telling yourself, yeah, I'm going to get to that. But after months turn into years, you realize that time is one investment you can't buy back. The earlier you start, the longer your money works for you. Stop letting someday steal your future. The best time to start was yesterday. The next best time is right now. Don't let procrastination be the reason you work longer and retire smaller. Call us today for a complimentary review of your finances. And remember, you only retire once. So let's get it right the first time.
And welcome back to Farm Truck Financial. We are having an amazing conversation. And again, a little overwhelming, but we're learning a lot about estate planning. And what I've seen is when our clients finish that estate plan, how good they feel. Like it's a good feeling to actually have that done and have everything in place. But Katharine, let's talk about today, like what documents people actually need when they begin to do estate planning.
Sure. So I think that we need to think about at least the basics, right? At least what do we want to happen upon our passing? So at the very least, a will. And then let's plan for not only if we pass away, But if we become incompetent, whether that is dementia, Alzheimer's, just getting older, or if it's a medical episode that has otherwise, put us into a situation where we can't make decisions for ourselves.
Right.
So really, when it comes to financial decision making, I really like to talk about two major documents. One is a pre-need guardian declaration that ahead of time you are telling the court who you would want to be designated the guardian over you, your person, and over your property and your personal rights. The other document is a durable power of attorney. And I want you to think of that type of document as a document where we're trying to get ahead of incapacity, right? We're trying to go ahead and empower another person with the powers and the abilities to take action to help us.
Right.
But the way that it works in Florida, and this isn't the case everywhere, but the way that it works in Florida is the day that you sign that power of attorney, that power is transferred to that person called the agent. It's not contingent upon you becoming incompetent. There's only one caveat for military deployment, but all of that changed October 2011, and we no longer have the springing contingent power of attorney. Another big change that happened in 2011 is each and every power has to be specifically enumerated, specifically listed out in that document. Wow. We used to recognize what was called general blanket power of attorneys. Now they have no specificity and it doesn't work. It's not effective to otherwise help somebody at a time that they really need it the most, right? So the idea is let's go ahead and give the power to someone that you trust. Trust that they don't use it unless it's needed.
Right.
But then if you ever start falling into that incapacity, they already have the power that otherwise your loved one would have to go to a guardianship judge to get.
Wow.
Yeah.
When we take on a client with retirement planning, we're doing financial planning, tax planning, income planning, we're doing the wealth portfolio. We're building that wealth portfolio for them to actually give them a rate of return to pay for healthcare, long-term care, and everything. Estate planning is such a whole different ball game in itself. So that's why, honestly, Katharine, I'm so grateful for you to come on today, because there are so many different things that people are not aware of, right? And so we all think, oh, we got to do this and we got to do this. But do you find that people really wait till the last minute or they procrastinate? Not necessarily everyone, but a lot of people do procrastinate.
A lot of folks do, and it's sad because if they procrastinate too long, then I'm not able to help them.
Right.
So an example that I had shared with you off air is if someone calls in and they're asking for a power of attorney for their mom or their dad or their spouse or their loved one who already has become incompetent. And at that point, it's too late because you have to have testamentary capacity in order to even sign these estate planning documents. So at that point, the only recourse that they have is to seek a guardianship for their loved one. And also just to sort of loop back around with regard to incapacity planning in general, healthcare. Yeah, who's going to make healthcare decisions for you? Your healthcare surrogate. How do you feel about end of life care? We're living longer and longer, and we have the medical capability of keeping a person alive artificially for a very long time, not just years, but decades. So how do you feel about that? And if you have strong feelings about that, then get your document in place. It's called a living will, and that's the document that states you don't want to be kept alive by artificial means.
So I actually went through an episode with my father. He ended up having dementia, Alzheimer's, and I'll tell you what, it is life-changing for not only my mom, she got the short end of that stick by taking care of my father, but also for us. I mean, really, my father went from being our father just to being someone else, and it really did change everything. So again, if you guys have any questions about estate planning, contact Katharine Payne below. And Katharine, we'd love to have you back on another show.
I'd love to come back. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all this great information.
You're welcome.
Everybody, on Farm Truck Financial, we'll see you on those back roads. Stay tuned for a lot more.
Thanks for riding along with us today. We hope you got some good dirt. If you liked today's show, subscribe, like, and share with all your farm truck friends. We hope you'll join us for the next ride on Farm Truck Financial, where we're always planting seeds for a better future, 1 mile, $1 at a time.
Farm Truck Financial, we're riding with you. down the back road steady.